Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Pentagon is launching a new health screening initiative that will check for low testosterone as part of the annual physicals for service members ages 30 and older. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the effort is intended to improve readiness, resilience, and long-term health while emphasizing that testosterone replacement therapy would be voluntary. Let's listen.
This initiative, it's not about artificial enhancement. It's about restoring and optimizing your natural capabilities, protecting your longevity, and ensuring you have the biological foundation required to sustain the fight.
But the announcement is also raising questions about the medical evidence behind widespread screening and how the policy will be implemented across the force. Federal News Network's Rachel Cohen joins me with more. Rachel, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Terry.
So walk us through this new policy. Do we know yet which troops will be screened or how testing will work, or what happens if someone is found to have low testosterone?
Sure. So there's, a lot of details that have to be worked out with the services, with DHA, that sort of thing. But as of right now, everybody who is age 30 or up across active duty, Guard, Reserve, men and women will be tested. It'll just become part of the annual, I'm guessing, blood test panel that people will do when they go in for their physicals. And it'll just kind of become part of the medical record.
The Pentagon is framing this as a readiness issue. Is there evidence the department is relying on to argue that identifying and treating low testosterone could improve military performance or long-term health?
So I think something that hasn't gotten a lot of notice, by people who don't pay as much attention to kind of the, longer-term military health issues. I don't think the secretary came out directly and said this in his video, but, operator syndrome, quote unquote, is, it has been around in the special operations community for a long time. And it's, this phenomenon of more people in special ops with low testosterone than, say, other specialties in the military. Or at least that's the perception. And so they've kind of dubbed it, operator syndrome. And so I think this policy, is part of a broader health and fitness push that they want to roll out. But it's also, there's been chatter in the special operations community for a long time about this, saying, our low testosterone, could be caused by, extreme amounts of stress that we are under, just given the combat situations that we're in. And so I think, and people have gotten treated for that, and quality of life has gotten better, health has gotten better. So I think that's sort of the test case for this. And, Hegseth is saying, let's address that. Let's, see if there are other people out there that have a similar issue and, get them what they need.
So we're early on in this. This is a pretty recent announcement, but it seems like implementation might be kind of complicated. How would they conduct these screenings? Who would be eligible for treatment? Does the policy apply equally across all the force, all the branches, both genders?
Yes. as far as we know right now, it would be, like we said before, anybody 30 or older. People under 30 can also opt in if they want. If you're experiencing symptoms that are kind of consistent with low testosterone, extreme fatigue, an array of other things. There are a lot of little policy pieces that go into making this reality. DHA, the services have to be involved. Undersecretary Tata will be involved with writing kind of the implementation memos of, how this interfaces with TRICARE coverage, how it interfaces with deployments and things like that. And that's deployments are a policy piece that will have to get figured out, because right now, if you're somebody who is prescribed a testosterone supplement, you have to get a medical waiver if you're supposed to deploy. So, are we opening up, thousands more people to the possibility that, they could get diagnosed with something? It would be up to them whether to receive treatment or not. And so, you run into questions of, would people postpone treatment for something because they don't want to, add another complication into the already very complicated, deployment run-up. Do they get their prescription and then get the waiver and figure out if they can actually use their product of choice when they go downrange, because not everything is available. So there's a lot of the nitty-gritty that they have to work out.
Rachel, wasn't hormone therapy part of the concern about continuing to allow trans members to serve?
That was, as in relation to a gender dysphoria diagnosis, that was, the thinking is, if you have to send people overseas, for combat, for, whatever sort of deployment, outside of CONUS, do they have extenuating medical needs? Would they need to regularly take hormone replacement therapy? And, when they started the process of ejecting trans troops last year, they said, no more hormone therapies for people that have these diagnoses.
So what does this policy tell us about how the Pentagon is approaching health and readiness more broadly? Should service members now be expecting other sorts of preventive health initiatives in the future?
Sure. So, this is in line with what we've seen from Hegseth already in sort of framing health and wellness and appearance and things like that as a lethality issue, as a, force readiness issue. So they put out a memo today saying, this is one piece of a broader warfighter health push. They're going to ask the services, what other similar options they have for human performance enhancement. I think that could range from, there's a lot of kind of tech initiatives in that space. There's a lot of things that can qualify as warfighter health, right? So we'll see what else the services try to make the case for, what OSD signs on to, and there could be more.
That's Federal News Network's Rachel Cohen. Rachel will follow up with you as this gets fleshed out.
Thanks, Terry.
You can find her story at federalnewsnetwork.com.